Welcome back to Narrative Network. Imagine this: a teenage boy delivering food to a mansion drenched in the rain, thinking it's just another routine drop-off to make a few dollars for his family. But what happens next will completely turn his life upside down, all because of a chance encounter with the mansion's owner. This is a story of compassion, mentorship, and the incredible journey of one young man who rose above his circumstances in ways he never dreamed possible. Stick around until the end, because this story is filled with unexpected twists and heartwarming moments that will leave you inspired. And if you love stories that celebrate resilience and the power of kindness, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Join us on this journey and let's dive in. Jamal Harris was a 16-year-old boy who lived with his mother, Denise, and his younger sister, Tasha, in a small, run-down apartment on the edge of town. Life had never been easy for Jamal's family. His father had passed away when Jamal was young, leaving Denise to raise her two children alone. She worked long hours as a nurse's aide, yet the bills piled up faster than she could manage. Despite the difficulties, Jamal's family shared a close bond, supporting each other through thick and thin. Jamal was a hardworking kid, mature beyond his years. After school, he would take on whatever jobs he could find to help make ends meet, from mowing neighbors' lawns to running errands. Recently, he had landed a part-time gig delivering food for a local restaurant. The pay wasn't much, but every dollar helped. One rainy evening, as Jamal waited for his last delivery order, he thought about the bills piling up at home. They'd received a notice about their rent increasing, and he knew his mother was worried. She had always done her best to protect him and his sister from financial stress. But Jamal wasn't a kid anymore. He knew what the reality was, and he wanted to do his part. Then, his phone buzzed. A new delivery order had come in. Jamal checked the address and was surprised. It was for a mansion in an upscale neighborhood on the far side of town, a place he had only seen in passing but never imagined he'd step foot in. The drive was long, and the mansion was unlike anything he had ever seen up close, with tall gates, a sprawling garden, and a driveway lined with luxury cars. With a sigh, Jamal grabbed the sack of food and made his way up the long, winding path to the front door, feeling a mixture of awe and intimidation. He knocked, uncertain of what to expect. The door swung open, and Jamal found himself face to face with an older man in his early 60s. Dressed in an elegant sweater and slacks, the man had an air of dignity, but also a warmth in his eyes that Jamal hadn't anticipated. This was Mr. Charles Beaumont, the owner of the mansion and a retired CEO of a successful tech company. Mr. Beaumont looked at Jamal, taking in his soaked jacket and the worn-out sneakers that had seen better days. But instead of dismissing him, Mr. Beaumont offered a friendly smile. "Come in out of the rain, son," he said. "No need to stand out there getting drenched." Jamal hesitated, unused to being invited into such a grand home. "Thank you, sir, but I don't want to intrude." "Nonsense," Mr. Beaumont replied, waving him inside. "You're doing me a favor bringing dinner to an old man like me." Reluctantly, Jamal stepped inside, his eyes widening as he took in the elegant entryway, the crystal chandelier overhead, and the polished marble floors. The place looked like something out of a movie, and he could hardly believe he was standing there. "Follow me," Mr. Beaumont said, leading him to a sitting room where a fire crackled in the fireplace. Jamal handed him the food, but before he could turn to leave, Mr. Beaumont gestured for him to sit down. "What's your name?" Mr. Beaumont asked, his eyes studying Jamal with curiosity. "Jamal, sir." "Well, Jamal, I'm Charles, and you don't have to call me sir." "How old are you?" "I'm 16. Mr. Beaumont nodded thoughtfully. "And you're working as a delivery driver?" "That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age." Jamal shrugged. "Just trying to help out my mom. She works really hard, and we have bills to pay." Mr. Beaumont's expression softened. He had always believed in the value of hard work, but seeing a young boy burdened by adult responsibilities tugged at something deep inside him. "How's school going for you?" "It's good," Jamal said, though his tone hinted at the strain he was under. "I try to keep up with my studies, but it's hard when I'm working after school." They talked for a few more minutes, with Mr. Beaumont asking Jamal about his family, his dreams, and his plans for the future. Jamal, who was usually reserved, found himself opening up to the older man, sharing his aspirations of going to college someday and helping his family out of poverty. When it was time for Jamal to leave, Mr. Beaumont stood and reached into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $50 bill. "Here, Jamal, for the delivery and for taking the time to chat with an old man." Jamal's eyes widened. "Oh no, sir. Mr. Beaumont, this is way too much." "Nonsense," Mr. Beaumont said, pressing the bill into Jamal's hand. "You're doing more than most kids your age. Keep it and take care of yourself." Jamal thanked him, his heart swelling with gratitude. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Jamal continued with his deliveries, though he often found his thoughts drifting back to his encounter with Mr. Beaumont. It had been a simple interaction, yet the kindness and interest Mr. Beaumont had shown him left a lasting impression. One evening, as Jamal was finishing up his shift, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hello, Jamal. This is Mr. Beaumont. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I have a proposition for you." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. He texted back, curious to hear what Mr. Beaumont had in mind. The next day, Jamal found himself back at the mansion, where Mr. Beaumont greeted him warmly. "Jamal, I was impressed by your work ethic and the sense of responsibility you have for your family," Mr. Beaumont began. "I can see you're a young man with a lot of potential, and I'd like to offer you a part-time job here at my estate." Jamal stared at him, speechless. "A job?" "Yes," Mr. Beaumont said with a smile. "I could use a hand with some things around the house, sorting files, maintaining the garden, helping with errands. It would pay more than the delivery job, and you would have the flexibility to focus on your studies too." Jamal was overwhelmed. He knew this job could ease some of the financial burden on his family, and he'd have more time to keep up with school. After a moment of hesitation, he accepted the offer, feeling a mix of excitement and disbelief. From that day on, Jamal began working at the mansion a few times a week. Mr. Beaumont treated him with respect, giving him meaningful tasks and taking the time to show him new skills. They would often talk as they worked, and Jamal found himself opening up even more, sharing his worries about his family and his dreams for the future. It wasn't long before Mr. Beaumont saw the spark of ambition and intelligence in Jamal. This wasn't just a boy looking for a paycheck. He was someone who deserved a real chance in life. As the weeks passed, Mr. Beaumont took Jamal under his wing, becoming more than just an employer. He became a mentor. He taught Jamal about business, finance, and the importance of education. He encouraged him to think big, to believe in his potential, and to envision a future beyond the struggles he had known. One afternoon, as they were working in the study, Mr. Beaumont pulled out a book on entrepreneurship and handed it to Jamal. "Read this," he said. "It'll teach you a lot about building something from the ground up. And who knows, maybe one day, you'll start a business of your own." Jamal's eyes lit up as he accepted the book. "Thank you, Mr. Beaumont. I never thought about doing something like that." "Well, maybe it's time to start thinking about it," Mr. Beaumont replied with a smile. "You're smart, Jamal, and with the right opportunities, you can achieve anything you set your mind to." With Mr. Beaumont's guidance, Jamal began to see new possibilities for his future. He started taking his schoolwork even more seriously, inspired by the idea that education could be his path to a better life. Mr. Beaumont would often help him with his studies, explaining concepts he found difficult and encouraging him to keep going, even when things got tough. In return, Jamal became deeply dedicated to his work at the mansion, going above and beyond to show his gratitude. He felt a growing sense of pride, not only in the work he was doing, but in the vision he was developing for his future. One evening, as Jamal was getting ready to leave, Mr. Beaumont invited him to sit down. He seemed to be considering his words carefully, as though he had something important to say. "Jamal," he began, "I've been watching you these past few months, and I'm incredibly impressed by your dedication and resilience. You remind me of myself when I was younger. I didn't grow up with much either, but I was given an opportunity that changed my life." Jamal listened intently, curious about what Mr. Beaumont was leading to. "I want to offer you a scholarship," Mr. Beaumont continued. "If you're interested, I'll cover the costs of your education, from high school to college. You've got too much potential to let it go to waste, and I believe you can do great things if given the right resources." Jamal was stunned. "A scholarship? But why?" "Because I believe in you, Jamal," Mr. Beaumont said, his eyes warm. "You deserve the chance to succeed, and I want to help you achieve that. All I ask is that you pay it forward someday. Help someone else who needs a break, just like you did." Jamal's heart swelled with gratitude. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. This opportunity would change everything for his family, allowing him to pursue his dreams and break the cycle of poverty that had held them back for so long. "I don't know what to say," Jamal whispered, tears filling his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Beaumont. I promise I won't let you down." With Mr. Beaumont's scholarship, Jamal's life took a transformative turn. He threw himself into his studies, working hard to excel in his classes and make the most of the opportunity he had been given. With Mr. Beaumont's continued mentorship, Jamal applied to college, earning a spot at a prestigious university where he could study business and finance, inspired by the lessons he had learned over the years. While at college, Jamal kept in close contact with Mr. Beaumont, who continued to offer guidance and support. Mr. Beaumont watched with pride as Jamal blossomed into a confident, ambitious young man with a clear sense of purpose. After graduating, Jamal returned to his community with a vision of giving back. He used the knowledge and skills he had gained to start a nonprofit organization focused on providing educational resources and mentorship to underprivileged youth. He wanted to create opportunities for kids like him who needed someone to believe in their potential. True to his word, Jamal paid it forward. He offered scholarships, tutoring programs, and career guidance to young people in his neighborhood, hoping to inspire them the way Mr. Beaumont had inspired him. Years later, Jamal invited Mr. Beaumont to speak at the opening of a new community center he had helped establish. The center was named the Beaumont Harris Center for Youth Empowerment, a tribute to the man who had changed his life and a symbol of the legacy they had built together. As Mr. Beaumont took the stage, he looked out at the crowd, his eyes landing on Jamal, who stood beside him with a proud smile. "Years ago," Mr. Beaumont began, his voice filled with emotion, "I met a young man who came to my door delivering food. He had no idea that a simple knock on the door would change both our lives. Jamal taught me that sometimes the best investments are not in stocks or companies, but in people. People with dreams, people with potential, people who just need someone to believe in them." The audience erupted into applause, and Jamal felt tears in his eyes. He knew that everything he had achieved was because of Mr. Beaumont's belief in him, a belief that had given him the strength to overcome obstacles he once thought impossible. After the ceremony, Mr. Beaumont took Jamal's hand, his voice filled with pride. "You've created something incredible, Jamal. You're not only helping others, you're building a future for generations to come." Jamal smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Beaumont. You gave me a chance when no one else would." I'll never forget that. As they stood together, surrounded by the young people whose lives were now filled with hope and possibility, Jamal knew that the path he had taken would inspire others to follow in his footsteps. The boy who once delivered food to a mansion had become a leader, a mentor, and a force for change in his community. And it all began with a simple act of kindness, a chance encounter that turned into a lifelong legacy. Together, Jamal and Mr. Beaumont proved that one small gesture could transform lives and create a ripple effect of positivity that would echo for generations. As the years passed, Jamal continued to grow his organization, expanding its reach far beyond his community. With the help of donors, volunteers, and a team of passionate staff members, he established programs that went beyond traditional education. The Beaumont Harris Center for Youth Empowerment offered workshops on financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and career planning, along with mental health resources and counseling for families. Jamal wanted to make sure that every young person who came through their doors was equipped with the tools to break free from cycles of poverty and reach their full potential. The center became a haven for kids from challenging backgrounds, a place where they felt seen, valued, and supported. Local schools and community centers partnered with the Beaumont Harris Center to refer students who needed extra guidance. And soon the center became a hub of activity and inspiration for families across the city. Mr. Beaumont, who had retired from his position as chairman of his former company, spent much of his time volunteering at the center. He enjoyed talking to the young people, sharing stories from his own life, and imparting the same wisdom he had given to Jamal years ago. He and Jamal worked closely together, discussing ideas for new programs and ways to expand their reach. One day, while reviewing the center's success with Jamal, Mr. Beaumont looked at him thoughtfully. "Jamal, have you ever considered taking this nationwide? Your work here is transformative. Imagine the impact we could have if centers like this existed in cities across the country." Jamal's eyes lit up at the idea. "It's been a dream of mine," he admitted. "I just didn't know if it was possible." "With the right support, it is," Mr. Beaumont replied confidently. "You've built something remarkable, Jamal. Let's find a way to make it bigger." Determined to turn their dream into reality, Jamal and Mr. Beaumont began planning a national expansion. They set up meetings with potential donors, spoke with community leaders, and presented their vision to educational organizations and corporations who shared their commitment to youth empowerment. It was a massive undertaking, and it required all of Jamal's energy and focus. With Mr. Beaumont's guidance and experience, they were able to secure the funding and partnerships needed to launch new branches of the Beaumont Harris Center in several major cities. They hired teams to run each center, all of whom were carefully trained in the organization's philosophy and methods. Jamal was adamant that every new center uphold the values of kindness, respect, and empowerment that had been so central to his own journey. As more centers opened across the country, they attracted national media attention. News outlets covered the success stories of young people who had gone from struggling in school to excelling in academics, finding fulfilling careers, and even starting their own businesses. The centers became known not only for their educational resources, but for their unique focus on personal development and mentorship, a place where young people could find role models and envision a future filled with opportunity. Jamal's story became the centerpiece of the organization's public image. He often traveled to the different locations, sharing his journey and inspiring young people and families to believe in their potential. He reminded them that change didn't always come from wealth or privilege. Sometimes it started with a small act of kindness and a belief that anything was possible. Years later, the Beaumont Harris Centers had transformed countless lives across the country. Graduates of the program returned as volunteers and mentors, eager to give back to the organization that had helped them find their path. The center's alumni network became a powerful force of young professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders, all of whom were united by the belief that they had a responsibility to lift others as they had been lifted. In one of the annual gatherings, Jamal was speaking to a group of recent graduates from the program, sharing his original story of delivering food to Mr. Beaumont's mansion. The young people listened intently, their eyes filled with admiration and inspiration. Jamal smiled, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought him here. "Every one of you has the power to change your life," Jamal said, his voice steady and heartfelt. "Just as Mr. Beaumont changed mine, you too can go out into the world and make a difference. The most important thing is to believe in yourself, even when it seems like no one else does." When Jamal finished, one of the students approached him with wide eyes. "Do you really think I can make it like you did?" Jamal placed a reassuring hand on the young man's shoulder. "Absolutely. You've got everything you need right here," he said, tapping his chest. "Remember that there are people who care about you and want to see you succeed. Never forget where you came from, and when you find your success, reach back and help someone else." As Mr. Beaumont grew older, he found comfort in knowing that his legacy would live on through Jamal and the countless lives the Beaumont Harris Centers would continue to touch. He had watched Jamal go from a humble delivery boy to a leader and an inspiration for so many. Their partnership was a testament to the power of mentorship and compassion, showing that lives could be transformed when people took the time to care. One day, Mr. Beaumont invited Jamal to his home, where they spent hours reminiscing about the early days of their journey together. Mr. Beaumont looked at Jamal, a proud smile on his face. "Thank you, Jamal," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You've not only fulfilled my dreams, but you've exceeded them. You've taken what little I gave you and turned it into something I could have only imagined." Jamal reached over, taking Mr. Beaumont's hand. "No, Mr. Beaumont, thank you. You saw potential in me when no one else did. You believed in me, and that changed everything." Mr. Beaumont smiled, his eyes glistening. "Promise me you'll keep this going, Jamal. Keep believing in people, even when others don't. That's how the world changes." With a heartfelt nod, Jamal made the promise. "I will, Mr. Beaumont. I'll carry your legacy forward, and I'll make sure the next generation has the same chance I did." When Mr. Beaumont passed away a few years later, he left behind a legacy that extended far beyond his wealth or accomplishments. His life had been one of hard work and success, but his true legacy was the compassion he had shown to Jamal, a young boy with potential who needed a hand up. In his will, Mr. Beaumont left a generous donation to the Beaumont Harris Centers, ensuring that the organization would continue to thrive for generations. Jamal, now a respected leader and role model, continued to grow the organization, expanding it internationally and establishing scholarships in Mr. Beaumont's name. The Beaumont Harris Centers became an emblem of empowerment and hope, a testament to what could be achieved when people were given a chance to succeed. Jamal often visited the original mansion, where he had first met Mr. Beaumont, to reflect on how far he had come. Standing there, he could feel Mr. Beaumont's presence, a reminder that kindness, mentorship, and faith in others had the power to change the world. And so, with every young person who walked through the doors of the Beaumont Harris Centers, Jamal knew that the legacy he and Mr. Beaumont had created would continue to grow. A legacy of empowerment, resilience, and hope that would inspire generations to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more exciting content. Share this video with your friends.